Hello and welcome to a new episode of Shortcut, the podcast that takes you on a shortcut to developer experience, developer productivity, and product engineering. I'm Morten.
And I'm Marilag. Welcome to the show. And we have here one of my very good friends, Waqas, who's been working a lot with internal developer portals. Hello, Waqas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so fun to see you here. And we're going to be talking a lot about how to build internal developer portals. But first, can you please give us a background on when you got started with developer portals? And tell us a little bit about your work.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks to both of you for having me here. I have been working with the internal developer platforms for 5-6 years now in different organizations. And I have tried to build one from scratch and also take something from market and start to implement it. So, one of my recent experience, I have been using something from the market and driving the adoption across the organization. So, yeah.
Cool. And as we get started, I once heard a clever person say that you should always start with the why. So why should you adopt an internal developer portal in your organization?
Well, there are several reasons. If you are focusing on improving the developer experience in your organization, the first thing that comes to mind is having a central place where all the developers can go and do their work, which can save time, of course. And we can talk about it, how it saves time, but save time and have a central place to go to for things like having documentation or APIs or other things, other automated things. That's why I think it's very important. If you want to provide a good developer experience to yourself, so basically we're doing it for ourselves, we are developers, it's very important to have a developer platform in your organization.
And I guess you also have talked to a lot of different organizations, different companies asking you for advice, obviously, because you have this long experience in not just implementing, but also driving scale. But perhaps one of the very first things that they ask you is, how do you actually get started?
Yeah. So different places that I've been talking to, the first question I get is where to start. And my answer is always the same: start small. And first thing you got to have to remember is, depending on the size of your organization and the amount of people you have, first thing you have to decide is either get something from the market, like nowadays Backstage is very famous from Spotify, or you can build something yourself if you have the capacity to do that. So start small and start from places which are your developers are facing different pain points in your organization. So you have to look for those first. But first you have to figure out if you really need something like a developer platform. And then once you have the why and once you have the how, which platform are you going to use, then after that, you should look into different pain points the developers have and then start to address those.
Okay, so maybe just a follow-up question. When you say start small, does that mean you need to start with a team who will look into this and start maybe playing around with the product or platform that you have chosen? Maybe, for example, Backstage or any other product, or as you said, build from scratch. Do you need a team for that, or can it be just a single developer, or how do you normally advise organizations?
It is great to have a team.
Okay.
I have seen examples where one person who likes the idea of a developer platform, one developer is working on it, and in the end, nobody is adopting the platform because it's just one guy, and that person can not do all of the things. So a team is very important. I'm not talking about a big team, but at least a few engineers who can work on the product and make it work for serve the rest of the people that work in the organization.
Yeah, and I guess you're gonna have to need someone who's also focusing on understanding those pain points. Maybe someone who analyze user needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's close to the business. Yeah.
Yes. So you need engineers, of course, to build and understand what technology. But for the business side, of course, people like PMs or UXers, they really help gather what's out there, what's the problem that people are facing. And in my experience, they do the job pretty good. And once you have figured those things out, then you can go ahead and do something to solve those problems.
Also, I'm interested in drilling a little bit into the pain points, because I imagine it might be vastly different depending on the size of the organization. But being in a big organization myself, I know that discoverability is something that pops up again and again.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear, like, when you talk with other organizations of various sizes, is there a common pain point, or is like, I'm also curious to hear if many people talking about discoverability, that it's difficult for different teams to discover what other teams doing, or what options do I actually have as a developer in this big company.
Yeah, actually, you said it right. Discoverability is one of the biggest pain points that developers face, especially when the organization is big and it's scattered over different countries. Then discoverability is a thing. Also APIs, but that can also fall into the discoverability. So you can put a lot of things in that discoverability basket. Documentation, it's very hard to find documentation for developers. And also, if you are a product-based companies, what different products are working on and what different products own. It's very hard to go and get that information at one single place. So if you can gather all of that at one place, that really helps in the discoverability and helps developers save time and focus on something else instead of looking for information.
Yeah. What about for smaller companies? I don't know if you come across, I know you've worked in large organizations as well, but for smaller companies, are there then other pain points? Or
in smaller companies, it could help as well, depending on what kind of, again, the pain points they come out. And the only way to figure this out is to go and talk to the developer community, because they are the best resource that can tell you what kind of problems they're facing. In my experience, that I've spoken to companies with about 50 developers, their pain point was to figuring out if they can already find some kind of an API that's already built by someone sitting in other country, or if they have to build it themselves. So in some cases, yes, they do have. But if there is a very small developer community sitting in one place, then you might not have these problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe for a small company, it's good enough to have an out-of-the-box product where you don't need to have a lot of customization, but use it for perhaps for discovering tools. Yeah. So I am also part of a smaller development team, and still, even if we're 10, 20 developers, it's still struggle to make sense of all the tools that we have. And it's scattered on all over places, and you have to learn the different platform for these tools. Whereas if you have like a single point of entry to find this, it's also maybe suitable for small organizations.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit about why and how to get started, but now once you got started and you started with your developer portal, how do you drive adoption? Do you have any experiences there on how to be successful in driving adoption and getting the users or the developers of the company to start using it?
Yeah, that's very important as well, because you will only have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of people who can work on your product. So you have to make sure that others in the organization can come in and contribute. But the question is, why would they contribute, right? So the right amount of motivation, do you have to motivate others, or there are several things that you have to cater for here. For example, you have to show the value of the platform, of if they come in here and add their own feature, what will they gain, what value they get out of it. And then another thing is you have to make it easier for them to start to contribute to the platform. So on your side, you would have to improve your documentation, which we developers not always are good at. But in this case, our documentation should always be top of the line and updated so others can come and contribute. And once you show them and help them. I call it like hand-holding development. So you go and sit with them and develop with them. And once they get use of it, then they can do it on their own. Then they will keep on adding features, whatever feature they're providing, because that's how they can also leverage the platform. So they don't have to do the platform themselves and then put their features on your platform, and then everybody else can use it.
Yeah, I guess there has to be some incentive somehow for them to use it, right? That they get some value out of it, and not just maybe exposing your documentation for your product and your APIs is one aspect. Maybe you want others to consume it, so that's a natural thing to do. But in order to maybe the other things like self-service or like what kind of value can the development team get out of using that portal?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're another product team who is providing some services inside the organization, it is you can achieve good value if someone provides you a platform and you can put your place there, and your user base can come over there. So let's take an example for documentation. This is a real world example from one of my previous experiences. So we were used to put all the documentation in Confluence. And when a new person joins in, you always send them a link to the Confluence documentation. So as long as you have the link, you will access the documentation. But when another person joins in, then you have to send the link again. What if you have a central place that people can go to and find that information? For developers, it would be a central developer platform. And you can put that link or whatever documentation you have over there. So you don't have to, send these links, like sending copy-paste links to another. And there could be many other examples that can come in.
What about like tailoring just a developer portal to be more, let's say, more team-focused or more focused on what it is you want to achieve with the portal? Because I've seen examples that the previous portal, or from a previous job of yours, you worked on a portal which I've seen where I really like the approach of the team can go in and create a cloud subscription as part of their product, and then say, okay, this is my forecasted cost for the subscription. And then once they've got started, there are some indicators of where they are in regards to being compliant, for example, or where they are in terms of their cloud cost. So there's something where you can come back and see, okay, how I'm actually doing, how am I performing in regards to how I created it. So in that regard, I really like that aspect of the team has an incentive to come in and they actually get something valuable out of it. But that also means that maybe the developer portal is a little bit more tailored to their needs.
Yeah. In the example that you gave, at that time, the pain point was creating cloud accounts. And if I remember correctly, it was, I think, several weeks waiting time because there were several approvals that they had to go through. So that the team who needed a cloud account today, if they do everything right today, they have to wait a couple of weeks to get their account. So and once they get the account, then the account was also tied to a person, and if that person leaves the organization, then where is all the budget going and how much we are spending? All of these things, these were pain points. So that's what we solved back then, where we gave the people the opportunity to create the accounts, and we took down the time from a couple of weeks to a couple of minutes. So people can not just apply and wait for the account, they can do it themselves, and also added these FinOps capabilities where you can go and see the cost. So people were focusing on other things, not just, waiting for cloud accounts.
Yeah. What about in your current setup in the developer portal you're doing now? Are you tailoring that? Because I know that's based on Backstage, and Backstage has this catalog feature, which is just a long list of things. So I can imagine that there might be aspects there where you want to customize it a little bit or maybe tailor it to your organization. Yeah. Are you doing anything like that in your current setup?
Yes, definitely. So you've given a cloud account example. There could be other examples as well. In Backstage, there's this concept of entities. You can also introduce your own entities, and you can use the pre-built entities by Spotify. You can of course introduce a cloud entity or something like that. But we are definitely doing that. So when users go into the platform, they can see their the accounts that they own and what is the cost and how the spending looks. And they can do other things, of course. But it's not just the cloud accounts. We have done the same with other things as well, like APIs or documentation as well.
Yeah. So certainly like a very quantifiable incentive like time saved or cost saved is a good way to drive adoption for teams to contribute on the platform. Is it the same drivers for other teams to use the platform to actually get it and open and do their to execute their workflow on the platform?
Yes. When you are talking, so you have we divide the users into different user bases. One are producers, one are consumers. The producers are also getting the value by having their user base coming to the same platform, and the consumers who are consuming the features, if they know where to go for, if they're looking for something, they have a place where they can go and search for. Then they're not wasting time by asking you or someone else, and that guy knows that guy and that guy knows that guy. So this time will be saved pretty much if you have one place to go and ask for information.
Yes, I guess it's also important to have that proof, because the producers of the features, the developers of the features, have to spend time on top of their regular work to build these capabilities on such platform. And I guess they have to prove the point of why we need to build this, because they can build something really fancy and then find out that no one is using these features in this platform. So how much of this is actually driven by leadership in your experience and when you talk to different organizations? Is this coming from top down or something that's being initiated by the developer communities themselves, or what kind of trend do you see?
If it comes from the top, it makes things really, really easy. I'm going to be very honest. So if you have the leadership support, then it makes things very easy to implement the portal and implement the different features. Of course, as developers, we would like to make our own life easier. And we always like the new shiny tool. And there will always be a need from developers to have this one place, if there is a place, to go and do things. But leadership support is definitely important.
Right. And I guess that's also linked on the prioritization of the features that are getting built. Like, what advice do you normally give, let's say, platform teams or product teams in a technique to prioritize the capabilities that they can put on a developer platform that maybe aligns to the business goal, so that they get a leadership sponsorship, for example?
The first starting point that we ask for is go and talk to your users. That's very important. I can sit in my room alone and think of a million features, but if they're not solving a real world problem that my developers are facing, then I'm not doing anything. So talk to your people, talk to the developers, what kind of problems they're facing. And then from that, you can pick one or two. Ideally pick one and then do it really good, and then go back to them and ask for feedback again. Okay, this is what you asked for. This is what we figured out. What do you think about it? And then iterate. So that's also important to keep iterating based on the feedback provided.
Yeah, because but I think that's a major pain point right now. A lot of organizations are adapting this product and platform strategy. And when you mean talk to the users, you meant, like, for example, platform teams talking to actual feature teams and asking what they need, but they're not doing that. So they're not actually getting the point. And that's even more introducing blockers and impediments to the product teams themselves, instead of platform teams actually becoming, the enabler, the removers of the blockers.
Yeah.
So
and when you talk to people and do something based on the feedback, then they are also interested in giving you feedback, because they know that you're listening, and that also creates this sense of community with you and the product. That we had this problem and they're trying to solve it, so let's try to give our input. So you build this relationship with your user base.
Yeah.
Now I can't help start thinking about what we recently talked with Susanne about, mapping the business landscape and what are the user needs. and following that. So I guess to some extent that's also what we're talking about here, that you need to talk with the users and figure out what are their needs and where do we get started. And then it sounds like you're saying that maybe have an MVP approach to doing a minimum viable product to start with. So you focus on one thing and do that well and iterate on that and improve it, and then see the adoption of that, I guess.
Yes.
And so we also talked about community, and I know that's something that's near and dear to our heart, the community. But how important is that in this developer setup? So you have a large organization with developers, maybe even scattered out in different departments. So how important is the community aspect of a developer portal? Do you need to establish some kind of community around it, maybe with contributions or to get engagement that way as well? Or how do you go about it?
I would say if you want to make your life easier, then definitely community is the way to go. It relieves the burden from the platform team, and you also get a different kind of perspective from your users. So community building is one of the first things that the team should do when they're working on a platform, because the feedback is coming from the community. This feedback loop is very important to tell you what to build next. What's the next big thing that you will be working on, and the things that you have already built, how is it doing in this outer space, right? So how people are using it. So it's very important. Community building, different ways you can build community. Also, it allows people to come out of their silos, because I've been working with product-based organizations for a long time, where we tend to just keep to our silos. And if you have a community to go to and meet other people, what they're doing and what they're experiencing, you learn stuff, you share things. So community is very important here in this case.
Yeah, so on the topic of community, how do you have any pragmatic approaches to actually keep this community alive? Is that something that has to be just ad hoc and organic and people just join whenever, or does it have to have some structure or governance maybe to succeed?
Yeah. So everybody has, you might also have experience with a lot of open source communities. Here we are more talking about inner sourcing, communities that are focused more on inner sourcing within the organization. And for the team itself, it's great to create a community where they are creating the space to connect to their users on a regular cadence. They can figure out whatever weekly or monthly cadence they would like to talk to their users, tell them what they did, tell them what's coming, what's expected, and then also get feedback. So anybody can come in, and also maybe do hackathons or other meetups to figure out what the next feature could be or how the future looks like. So just keep the community engaged through meetups or hackathons, and also keeping people incentivized. So recognition is a big thing in community. When you have people with a lot of feedback, maybe you have one person who is always giving you feedback. It's very important. Incentivize in some ways, which really helps people and motivates people.
Are you then also able to get just regular product teams, so to say, to contribute into the actual developer portal? Because I imagine that one aspect is teams that have features or APIs that they need to expose, or if there's a team that's doing SRE and then they expose their SRE service through the portal, and obviously they need some kind of say window frame or something where you can go and then shop the SRE service. But for the regular product teams that are more consumers, are you also able to get in to contribute to the developer portal?
Yes, depending on what services that are being provided. And if you have planned it accordingly with this purpose in mind, then definitely you can do that. Your users, and that's something, again, you can find out through your communities, what your product teams are looking for, and then solve one of the biggest problems they have, starting from there.
Yeah. Cool. And you have also done something around communities in developer portal, right?
Yeah, I have tried building the actual community application or feature on a developer portal. And we have actually learned a lot, not just community, but also mentorship, so that you find the people who can mentor you in a specific maybe tech or platform. And that's really good. So just providing a single space for developers, not just to find the tools, but to find people who can help them learn these tools. And then on a greater scope, find groups of people who work under the same kind of interest. So, and I think that's really driving adoption also, that's bringing people into the platform itself or to the portal itself. So they go there, maybe look for communities that they can join to, or there's also a feature that allows you to find events, like actual either in-person or virtual events, and then you can join. And while they are there, they start clicking around and then see, oh, I can find documentations too, or I can find APIs. So basically, thinking of something that features that just pull your developers in so that, they discover other benefits into the portal.
Yeah, but that's also a cool way of getting people engaged, right? And then it's not only about, let's say, the development aspect in terms of exposing your API and documentation, but in like you have your individual development as well, because you can go and find a mentor. So that's, to me, that almost sounds like the next level of a developer portal, where you have some self-service already. You can go and get an SRE service. You can expose your API, but you can also find like a front-end community to join within the company. So I think that sounds pretty cool, that that's actually possible.
Or to adding to what you just said, some people really like to contribute, and they're good community contributors and drivers. If they have a place to go to and see what's coming, what kind of events they can join, like a shared event calendar somewhere, which has all the events that you have, and you can join right there from that one window, then it really makes them happy and engaged. And then they, in return, they drive the communities.
So it's not just also about sharing features, capabilities, data. It's also about sharing knowledge. It's a place to share knowledge. So
Definitely.
So now we have talked about how to get started, why you need to get started, how to drive adoption, and then building communities. But how do you actually get feedback from the users so that you can understand what would be the next step? How do you scale? So what is the best way to get the feedback from your developer community?
All right. Yes.
And that's something that we can talk about in the next episode.
Yeah, so we'll leave you with a cliffhanger, because we will keep talking, but we'll stop the episode now. And then you have to listen in on the next one to learn more about feedback. And
you have time to come back and listen to part 2.